What God has done with my pain.
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 I've done that,
Yeah.
and so I would keep pressing. And this is where I
Yeah.
started to get defensive and press when I was feeling
Yeah.
that rejection as I would press. This is where that pushing back started to happen, like the getting angry and the constantly pressing into situations and stuff like that, which
Yeah.
was probably difficult to deal with. But all of this is happening, and then I come home and I can't do anything right. I'm getting smacked around sometimes. And as I got older, that only got worse. And we are now kind of entering into high school, middle school, like destroyed me, the comments about my mom. It wasn't just a one-time thing. This was like something that was said often. And
Mm.
just kind of being exiled and being picked on and not being accepted because of the way I was.
Mm.
I met a really good friend. Her name was Madison in middle school, and we were friends for a while. High school things shifted with her. We reconnected here recently, but I did gymnastics. That was my outlet. I was a competitive gymnast, and that's where I got a lot of like my strength and things from. And
Mm.
that was kind of like age, 10, with my mom passing and everything. And now we're 11, she's passed. I turned 12. Oh, and I had a friend named Leoma. She was just as silly as me, and that's what
Mm.
I needed at the time. So she was at my birthday and my friend Kenzie. So I had three girls, Madison, Kenzie, and Leoma, and those were my three that I stuck with. Leoma moved away after a few years. The other two stayed. Kenzie was like one of my best friends for a long time, leading into
Mm.
high school. And
Yeah.
Kenzie is still one of my really good friends. We're still pretty connected, and we were best friends all through high school. But yeah, that was that period of time from 11 into now we're getting closer to 14, and we're kind of hitting that marker.
Wow. Wow.
Mm,
And like again, such a big transition to step into that. And but it's hard because you're in this new community and this community feels like it's completely not objecting, but rejecting you. And that can't possibly feel good, especially when
no.
you've lost a loved one and they seem to center a lot of their um topic or conversation against you to be on that. And man, that's very difficult. So just I'm really grateful that God blessed you with friends that could have at least surrounded you during that time, so that you weren't completely and utterly alone with what you had going on at school as well as what you had going on at home, because then it really
Yeah,
isolates you and you
it
need some
does.
shred of light to carry you through. So now you're 16, now you're developing and you're growing. What's going on now from 16 to your adulthood?
Well, we're actually 14 at this
Oh,
point.
14. Okay.
Yeah, we're still young.
Wow.
So, this is when I started getting really heavily involved in the church. It was always something I loved, even, when my mom first started going. And we were in the church when I was in middle school, but I was still so young. I
Yeah.
mean, my pastor, Pastor Randy, we still talk to this day. And it's funny because my father actually moved where he is now, not on purpose. He just happened to also be there. And he remembered hearing the first part of like how we moved there. And he asked me to come in and just like tell me about, you
Yeah.
know, or tell him about my life leading up. I met him
Yeah.
when I was about 11, 12, and
Yeah.
we were going to church and stuff. And he was always blown away at like my spirit and like just how much I just tried to keep everything like positive. And
Yeah.
I always loved being at church. I didn't fully understand Jesus because a lot of the things that I was learning in church, they weren't being transferred into home.
Mm.
This wasn't something that was actually being practiced, kind of like you said earlier. I don't remember. I think you said it during our break when we were
Yeah.
talking, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that it wasn't something it wasn't being transferred. Like what we were learning
Yeah.
was not being applied. And so I didn't
Yeah.
really understand it. But I loved being at church. And in high school, I was still in church, and this is when I met my friend Sammy through gymnastics a year prior, going into high school. So I had her my first year of high school, but she was a year older than me. And then she went to an academy, and we're still friends to this day, Sammy and I. She was a big part of my life. Um, but I'm in high school now, and I'm trying to figure things out. And I'm still getting bullied, but now I've been a gymnast for so long that I kind of had more of this angry mindset about me. And,
Mm.
I'm still kind of getting thrown around at home. And my father, I just feel like he was so triggered. And that's
Mm.
why he reacted the way that he did. Like now, when I look back on it, is he was trying his best and then something would happen. And I feel like he would genuinely, like a lot of the times, he would just not be there.
Yeah.
And like I could spill a glass of water and that would set off a physical altercation at times, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
I'm sure for him, other things had transpired that he was just like, festering on. But I just happened to always be the kid that was there when he like
Yeah.
lost it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I got a brood of a lot of that. And I would be told things, by him like, you're not doing this right. And it was just so hard for me to deal with because I feel like if I did
Mm.
what he and oh, my headphones died. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, that's good. If I did what he told me to do and it went well, it was, see, I told you I was right. If I
Mm.
did what he told
Yeah.
me to do and it went badly, it was my fault and I shouldn't have done what he told me to do.
Wow.
And then if I didn't do what he told me to do, that was like automatic punishment, physical
Yeah.
punishment, isolated. I'm not going anywhere. I would get grounded from youth group.
Mm.
Like that's how
Yeah.
I never really got to go. I was in trouble most of my like teen years. I remember
Yeah.
being in trouble most of the time, not being allowed to go anywhere. And I did struggle in school, but I really did need a lot more help
Yeah.
than what I was getting. And I tried to express that, but I wasn't believed. So then that was just another
Mm.
aspect that led into this part of my life that actually I have never shared publicly. So this is going to be the first time I've shared it with some of my friends, close friends, but this will be this will be out there now. And I think God says it's time for it to come out. Um, I I never felt like the decision I made or what I said was taken
Mm.
into consideration. I always felt like I was making the wrong decision or I didn't know what to say because when I did say something, it was wrong and I'd get in trouble for it, or
Mm.
it would cause my dad to get so angry that, like even in
Yeah.
him trying his best that like things would get
Yeah.
physical. And then with friends, anything I said was getting rejected and things like that.
Mm.
And so now I am a young girl and this is kind of going into 15 years old. And I was staying the night at a friend's house, and I'm going to keep this part kind of general. I am going to go into detail about what happened, but there was a boy there that was a little bit older. And this is just because I have walked in forgiveness. That's why I'm keeping it general.
Mm.
I will not name drop. I've genuinely forgiven this person. We
Mm.
were also both in high school, and the dynamics of things, you know, he was also a child, and I'm not going to blame a child, even though he was, older than me and things of that nature. I'm that's why I'm not going to name drop or say like who it was, because
Yeah.
this is me operating in forgiveness in that.
Yeah.
And I truly have forgiven him because we were kids, and
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
neither one of us knew what life was or what was happening. And
Yeah.
um, so I'm staying the night at a friend's house, and there's a boy there, and my friend had fallen asleep. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of thought this boy was cute at the time. He was older, so I was like, oh, no one's ever interested in me, like
Yeah.
anybody, friends, nothing, like this
Yeah.
person is showing interest in me.
Yeah.
And that was something I didn't understand, and I hadn't experienced before. And so we're sitting there and we're goofing off, and it led to a singular kiss. And I was like, like you get these
Yeah.
little butterflies, and I had no clue what I was in for after this. And I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely fine.
So we're hanging out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no one's ever been this interested in me. Not even the
Yeah.
boyfriends I've had. They've all kind of treated me like I was
Yeah.
just optional, and,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I've always been treated like I'm the third or fourth option, or I'm not an option at all.
Yeah.
Um, and so he says, hey, I don't want her to wake up and get mad at us. And it wasn't, like a boyfriend or anything like that. It was just
No,
like,
yeah.
you know, he said, I
Yeah.
don't want her to wake up and like see us. Why don't we go into the guest room? And so I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm 15. I had barely had any experience with a boy
Yeah.
at this point. And I didn't think anything. I thought we were going to kiss. That was like
Yeah.
as far
Yeah.
as I thought as a young girl
Yeah.
that it was going to go. And
Yeah.
this is where a lot of my pain like really like started
Mm.
to sit in my soul, was after this event. And I'm sitting there, and I remember I was dirty from gymnastics because I came over after practice to her house to spend the night. And I still had my leotard on, and I had it
Yeah.
rolled down. I had like a cami on, and I had
Yeah.
like my Sophie shorts on, but I was like covered in chalk. I was sweaty. I was smelly. Like
Yeah.
I was dirty. I was just like physically dirty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew I was. And I'm sitting there, and at first we're just kissing, and then all of a sudden I end up on my back.
Mm.
And I I didn't at first. I was like, "Oh, uh, you know,
Yeah.
why am I on my back?" But I was like, "Oh, well, I've never really been in a situation like this before where it's this
Yeah.
spontaneous. I don't know, like maybe this
Yeah.
is how it's supposed to be." I
Yeah.
was I had like just turned 15.
Yeah.
Like I didn't
Yeah.
know. Like I was not
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I didn't
How
know.
how
Like
could you know? You know?
yeah, like I just didn't know. Um and then all of a sudden I remember he starts taking my shorts off, and I was not asked. I was
Yeah.
not any other experience. Like I always thought like you would be asked, like there would be a
Yeah.
conversation, like
Yeah.
it would be like lovey-dovey if something like that were to happen, or
Yeah.
like you would have to love each other for something like that. So my body immediately shut down, and I
Yeah.
was now laying with my arms down, my back on the ground, and I was completely frozen.
Yeah.
I couldn't physically move.
Yeah.
And I
Your
just
body went
remember
into shock.
yeah.
Mm.
And I just remember sitting there, and things are being taken off of me. And I thank the Lord every day that there wasn't full penetration,
Mm.
like genital
Yeah.
penetration with
Yeah.
his genitals. Um, I've never went into this much detail before. Wow. Um, but there was penetration with like, the hands and the mouth, and
Yeah.
I just laid there frozen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You don't know what to
I
do because
didn't
you weren't
I didn't I
prepared
didn't
for
know
it. You
I didn't even know I could say no. I didn't know how to say stop. I
Yeah,
hadn't been taught anything
yeah,
about this. I didn't know
yeah,
what to do in an experience like this. I
yeah,
didn't even know it would get to this point,
yeah,
where my
yeah,
clothes were being taken off and I'm laying on the floor in this guest room. My friend's asleep on the couch and I'm just frozen. And
yeah,
and I'm losing my words.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and then after that had happened to me,
mm,
um, the way the Lord stopped it is he wanted me to perform
yeah,
oral sex on him. And he put um himself in my hand, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and he was trying to convince me and he didn't like try to but he
Force
he
it.
put it in my hand and I'm just kind of
Yeah,
sitting there like I keep backing up and I don't really know what to say.
yeah,
And he's like, "Come on, it'll be fun." And then finally like I just felt like this sense of clarity and I said, "Oh, I don't know." And I
yeah,
and I just I finally got something out.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
before I was just laying there like nothing,
yeah,
like just laying
yeah,
there. Nothing was happening.
um,
And I'm sitting here like this, literally like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
And I'm like,
No,
no, yeah, like,
I'm definitely gonna say that like you go into a shock because one I think that understandably like young girls aren't educated because you don't really want to expose them to such things, but also by not doing so we take away the availability of having a tool of saying
yeah,
no or know what to expect and then know how to handle it from there.
and
And of
know how
course
to
I'm not
stop it.
promoting yes, I'm not promoting like
And then,
absolutely go out there, but
right.
yeah.
And then meanwhile, boys are taught, well, if she seems into it,
Yeah,
whatever
exactly.
goes. And like that's why like for a long time I was so incredibly infuriated with this person, but the Lord showed me like the male perspective for
Yeah,
young boys, not for grown men, for young boys. And I'm
yeah,
not excusing his behavior. He did what he did and it was wrong. And
yeah,
that happened to me. And
yeah.
for a long time I blamed myself. And I thought I
Oh,
had put
yeah,
myself in that situation and so after I finally said, "Oh, not this time." And he said, "Well, maybe next time." And I just said, "Yeah, maybe," because I
yeah,
was like ready to leave. Like
yeah.
I was
You
like
were
anything
wanting
I
the
need to say.
safety.
Yes, I was like anything I need to say to be done. Like and
Yeah.
I just remember like when he was down there, I was like, "I'm dirty."
Mhm.
Like I'm not even clean. Like I'm so dirty right now. Like and now I feel dirtier and I just
Mm.
remember feeling so dirty in every
Yeah,
way. Like I was already physically dirty and then I just felt so dirty. Like I felt
yeah,
so disgusting. And that happened. And then after that, it was like he used to talk to me like pretty regularly, like when we would see each other. He kind of stopped. And that was like when I made the indication that um he realized that something wrong happened and he was
yeah.
probably feeling like the guilt of it um or maybe he wasn't, maybe he didn't care, I
Yeah.
don't know, but um that's what I choose to believe, is that he realized that
Mm.
something happened that probably shouldn't have happened. And being that young of a girl, I remember, and this memory didn't come back to me for years later because I had been diagnosed with PTSD in my
Yeah.
adulthood, and a lot of that blocks until you start working through it, things will start to come back. And
Mm.
I actually
Yeah.
didn't even remember being sexually assaulted until,
No, that's a
um,
thing.
yeah. And like it randomly came up in therapy. I was like, am I making this up? And she said, no, tell me about that. And I started
Mm.
talking and working through it. And I realized,
Yeah.
that my brain had just completely blocked it out. And I felt like a liar because like I had never shared it with like my
Mm.
husband or anything. But
Yeah.
after it happened, two things happened. Um, the friend that I was with, they actually told her
Mm.
what happened, but they didn't tell her everything.
Yeah.
So they only said that I did something to them.
Yeah.
He only said that I did something to him. And so
Yeah.
now his story was out. So now I'm like, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if I
And
did
it's
tell somebody, no one's going to believe me now. Everyone's going to
yeah.
think that I just don't want to admit that I did it. And I'm crying
Yeah.
wolf.
Yeah.
And so now, and she told me he said it. And she was like, how could you do that? Like, why would you do that? And
Yeah.
I just had to say, I'm sorry. And that's all I said. I just said, I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
then I went through this really confusing mindset. I was like, is this him like choosing to be with me? Is this like how that happens?
Yeah.
Like, so I messaged him and I was like, hey, and I think I put like a winky face or something, thinking that like maybe like maybe we're supposed to be in a relationship now. Like,
Yeah.
never got a response. So then
Mm.
it's like my body had been used and abused, and now I'm rejected again. And
Yeah.
now I'm being made out to be a whore. And I did something, and nobody knows what actually happened that
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah.
And I
Mm.
have to sit with that.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking into, young womanhood. This is 15, and I, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
And
was a
I
huge,
I'm gonna just like not sit in it, but like talk to you about that because
yeah,
it's well, you said you feel gross and you also feel blamed, because girls are supposed to keep their hands to themselves and be, like you said, quiet or just this is our body and all this stuff. And there's this, media makes women seem out to be all of these things. Like if she's
yeah,
out here with a guy exposing herself in any kind of way, then she's all of these other things. But this happens more than should be, unfortunately.
yeah,
And you said young, and it's so true. I remember in middle school, I had experienced something um, similar in the sense of like just surprise. The first thing I think I remember, I blocked it out, and it's funny, like things you block out, but then the Lord kind of reveals them to you. I was probably
mm,
in the seventh grade, and I don't remember what I was doing, but I think I was waiting on a teacher by her door. And this boy came up to me just out of nowhere. He was in my class or in class of seventh grade and just kissed me out of nowhere, like
yeah, like
just
no,
straight nowhere. Just he just puckered up and I just remember thinking like I'm in school, okay? Like and also I don't think I've ever had my first kiss, so I was like in
it was
school.
just stolen. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
and I shocked. And then I remember that he picked me up and sat me on a desk, which I was just like I literally like put my hand on his chest only because the fear of a teacher walking in that situation did an override on me. Because I remember I already felt guilty that he kissed me and that he felt that I had allowed it to get to the point where you could lift me up and place me on a desk.
right.
So
But you're sitting here like, I don't even know what just happened. It
I
happened so
don't
fast.
I've never spoken to this kid. Like I just remember very vividly that I did not speak to him, that we were not friends. It so I was shocked. And so I was like, did he have a crush on me and all this stuff? And like it I just kept my distance. Like I remember I put my hand and I just said, this is a classroom. Like and I just was like, I don't want to because I grew up with a Hispanic Catholic mother. I was like, I do not
Oh my
want this
gosh.
to get back to her. Yeah. So I was
Yes.
like,
And that's how I felt as
I
well. I
can
was like,
yeah.
my dad can't know that that happened. Like,
Yeah. It's horrifying. And so you immediately blame, 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 blame. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how. And so I was shocked. I felt gross. I don't know what his I have no anger towards him. This unfortunately seems to be something that happens. And
yeah,
I don't know if he was doing this to a lot of girls to rally up kisses and saying, I got to kiss her, I got to kiss her, because he just came out of nowhere. And I feel like I remember him passing around who he got to kiss. And in my head, I was like, I'm just not going to entertain this because I didn't know how. And so I remember I did have this other friend who I was very close to, and we were like boyfriend and girlfriend as middle school boyfriend and girlfriends go. Like there's nothing but just the title there. And We were in the computer lab and he said, and I'm again not same as you, I'm not gonna give any names because I'm not angry, but this needs to be talked about because when things like these happen, pain starts to exist and it starts to uh, plant a seed. A seed is a
Yeah.
seed. It can be a bad seed or a good seed, and it can be hard for people to talk about. So if me talking about it or you talking about it, it makes someone else feel seen and know that these things do happen.
And they're
That's
not
not your
normal.
fault. Just
Yeah.
because you were friendly, it was not your fault. Just because you froze up, it is not your fault. Like you
Yeah.
said, you were expecting a conversation. You were expecting to say, "All right, let's proceed."
Or no.
So I
Yeah,
or no,
something.
yeah,
Something,
something,
like, I thought
and
that I was just gonna kiss a cute boy. I didn't know
yeah,
that I was
there
gonna
was
have
more.
my whole life change in a moment's instant,
Yeah,
you
because I
know?
mean, it's when you're starting young or anything, like a kiss is like that's what you think is the extent of it, right? It later on, do you I guess unlock or discover that there's more behind it. But
Right.
like I was just sitting there with him, and we were in the computer lab, and he was my friend. And then we, started dating as just two people who had the title, and I just remember that he said, um, the word of like, I'm hard. And I was like, I have no idea what that means. Like I had no idea what that means. And he grabs my hand and I think, oh, he's gonna hold my hand. And he places it on his lap. And I this is so funny looking back at it now, and it's not funny, but it's funny. I thought something was wrong with him. I was like, I don't know if you ever saw the Vine where the lady on the bus is like, like my hand has never left the vicinity so fast. And I
Right, because
literally was
you're
like,
like, "Oh my god," like,
I'm like, what
yeah,
is wrong?
like,
I, I know now, but I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, I can't, I don't know if he thought I was like, I knew how to help. I literally thought something was wrong with him. I legitimately was like, he's ill or something's broke. I don't know. I don't know. He's got a water, but I don't know what till this day. And like, if you've listened to the first episode, you know about my background, but like, I blocked it out. I didn't, I was just like so uneducated. And so I literally like, I didn't know what it was. It could have been, I didn't know what it was. So I remove my hand and I just run out of the computer lab. I run out because I don't know what it is. I don't know. I just and so he went around because like I broke up with him. It made me so uncomfortable and I felt gross. I was like, I should not have been there with him. I should not have been in the computer lab. I should have never given allowed the title of boyfriend and girlfriend. Like you blame yourself. Blame, 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 blame.
yeah.
There's 112 reasons why you shouldn't have, you shouldn't have, you shouldn't have. Um, and so I broke up with him. And he started telling people that I was just too afraid to move on. And meanwhile, I'm like, what is he talking about? I don't remember being afraid. I don't know what he's talking about. I had no like when I say I had no memory, I just mean I had no memory of us trying anything. Cause that attempt of his was just
Because
me being like,
you didn't even know, you were just like
I'm
you
not
were
again.
like, "Oh, okay," and then you were like, "He's gonna hold my hand," like,
Cause that's what
it's
I fantasized about was holding hands. I was like, I can't wait to
yes,
hold a hand. A nice
yes,
that matches.
exactly, like right, and I think that that's, before we leave this, part of the story, I think that that is such a big thing, um,
Mhm.
surviving those situations and at least
Yeah.
knowing, or maybe a better way to say it is not having to feel as much of that blame
Yeah.
because they've already been told, if this
Mm.
happens to you, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
And
You're
if you
not
say
dirty.
no, it's not your fault. And
Yeah.
even if you do freeze and you don't say no, and you couldn't move because you're 14 and you don't know what to do, you're not dirty and it still wasn't your fault. Like there
Yeah.
should be a conversation. There should be this. You didn't know that this was going
Yeah.
to transpire to what it was. And it
Yeah.
just gives them the opportunity to also avoid situations like that. I look back and I think if someone would have talked to me about things like that, especially being alone in a dark room where no one else is
Mm.
around and exposed to me at a younger age, like what the dangers of that would have are,
Yeah.
um, I would have been a lot more apprehensive about even going into that room. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And um,
So true.
Yeah. And
So
it
very
gives
true.
us, not that it's our responsibility to, you know every situation that's going to transpire, but at least then you can avoid the ones that you feel you need to avoid,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
as much as you can,
Absolutely. And
you
it's let's
know?
be honest, it's a heavy topic. It's a very heavy topic. Most
Yeah.
people don't want to talk about it, and especially on um or I feel like things are changing now, and so we are talking about it more, but a lot of times people don't want to talk about it, or it's just an uncomfortable topic to talk about, or they don't want to offend anyone. Um but if you can come from a place of kindness and love and
Mhm.
protection, not in a like I'm protection as in overbearing, but protection as in like this will help protect you. So incredibly important. But yeah, like so you mentioned that happened, then he started talking, and I can only imagine, like you said, it felt like, well, now he said something. I can't contradict them. No one's gonna really see my
Yeah,
side of it.
it was just another like, well, no one really takes anything I say seriously anyway, so I just went with the lie, and I said, "Yeah," and I apologized to my friend, and, um, I told her I was really sorry, and I honestly, after, all of that happened, I don't remember it affecting me very much. I'm pretty sure, like, it just, like, was just taken all the way out of my brain for a moment's
Mm,
time, and,
yeah.
it was like my mind said, "All right, well, we've decided that we don't want this and we don't need it and no one's gonna listen, so
Yeah.
it didn't happen." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So going forward from that, typical high school, the same stuff is happening. And I met my husband in high school, actually.
Aw.
We met in computer class first. I had a boyfriend at the time, and no offense to this boyfriend, but he was awful. I won't say his name, but he was like baseball star, whatever. And he just really did not treat me very well. Like it was the same theme that we've been, finding in the past few years,
Yeah.
um, of all these things I've been sharing with you, is I've been treated like an option. I'm secondhand, and that's
Mm,
how he was
yeah.
treating me. Like I was. And I had kind of sat into that at this point. I was like, "Oh, it just is what it is," and, like, I turned into the quote unquote "chill girl," the chill girlfriend, like, I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, whatever, like, whatever. Like, oh, that
Yeah.
doesn't bother me, whatever." And, like,
Yeah.
I was like, "This is it. This is obviously how things are supposed to be." Um, and I fell into that, and, he sucked. He really sucked. I again, like, no hate, I'm not gonna name drop, but he sucked. And I was only with him for a few months, and Elijah and we were friends, and I told him I had a boyfriend. He didn't like overstep that. He was super respectful. And we go to Relay for Life, which obviously is a very big deal to me. And then also at that moment, my father had cancer, my as well. And he's still here. He's still living. He has beat cancer, and he had colorectal cancer. So as I'm going through high school, actually, when I met Elijah, I'd just gotten out of a cast. I'd snapped my arm completely in half. My
Mm,
um the back of my hand, like this arm doesn't straighten
mhm.
anymore for that reason.
Yeah.
But the back of my hand touched the back of my shoulder. I mean, like,
Mm,
it looked like
mm,
this, like, it was
mm.
completely snapped in half.
Oh,
So I
goodness.
was in a cast for a long time. When Elijah met me, like, my arm was still bent because it was just so tight for being in a cast and everything else. Um,
Mm,
and I had this boyfriend or whatever, right? Actually, this was not far off after that happened to me. I just kind of, sat into that, like,
yeah.
chill girl. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Like confidence gone. I let anything and everything happen. And Well, not everything. I did have a couple boundaries. Thankfully, I had not lost my virginity. At this
Mm,
point, that was one thing I was like super adamant about. I actually thought it was like kind of gross to
yeah,
just go all the way like with someone, and I really wanted to save that for my husband, and God allowed me
yeah.
to do that even after everything that happened
Mm,
to me. Like, um, my husband Elijah is the only person I've had sex, like full intercourse with. I mean, I've made mistakes
yeah,
along the way, and then, you
yeah,
know, that interaction definitely shaped me a lot. And then other things I experienced, just with boys and like interactions shaped me a lot when
yeah,
I was a little bit younger and stuff like that. But God preserved that. And um we were at Relay for Life. I was still with the other boyfriend, and he told me I was being clingy, but he was hanging out with this other girl, Faith. Like, I already
mm,
kind of saw what was happening, and I was like,
yeah,
I was pretty sure he was cheating on me, or
yeah,
maybe he was about to, or maybe he was going to break up with me. I don't know. So he like was avoiding me, and like he knew like that my mom died from cancer. My sister Melanie at the time also had leukemia. My
mm,
grandfather at the time had throat cancer at the time and leukemia, and my father was battling cancer, and then my mother had passed
mm,
away from brain cancer. So this is like a huge deal to me. Relay for Life
yeah,
was a huge deal for me
yeah,
and our family. And Elijah invited me to Relay for Life just to hang out as friends, like not a date, nothing like
yeah,
that. He was just like, "Hey, you want to go?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going with my boyfriend." And he was like, "Oh, all right," like he
yeah,
was like,
yeah.
"Whatever." And so it's nearing the end of the night, and I'm just sobbing. I'm sitting in a chair in the middle of the field in a zebra print snuggie because it's like 2012, 2013, like.
Yeah, the time.
Yes, I'm sitting in a zebra print snuggie and I'm just sobbing. I'm just crying, sitting alone in the middle of a field in a chair. And he says, "Hey, Stacie," and he admitted this once we got married. But he was like, "Oh man," she said that she was going with her boyfriend. She's just sitting there alone, like what the hell? Like, and he was like making fun of me with his friends,
Yeah,
and then, but then he noticed he was crying. He was like, "Actually, dude, hold on." Like, he was like, "Something's wrong." And he
yeah,
came up to me and he like squatted by me. He's like talking to me. And he was like, "Hey, where's your boyfriend?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. Like, he sucks." I was like, and that's kind of what I said. Like, I was
yeah,
like, "He's just being really crappy right now." Like, I don't know. And I wasn't even crying over him. I was crying because of my mom. And like, I was just super
mm,
emotional. Like, and I didn't have anybody there. Like, my
yeah,
friend Kenzie
yeah,
was volunteering, and she also invited me to go with her. And I just wish I would have went with someone that like was going to be more supportive because I was not all right.
yeah,
Like I was
yeah,
not okay. My sister was volunteering with another group of people, so she wasn't there with me physically. We were in the same high school, but she wasn't there with me physically, and so I'm just alone. And Elijah comes up, and I told him, I was like, "Yeah, I'm here alone." And he was like, "Well, just remember you're too beautiful to cry." And I was like, "This sly dog." You know what I mean? Like, and he was being sweet. And then he was like, "All right, well, I got to get back over there to my friends." And I was like, "Yeah, you're fine, dude." Like, and I didn't hold it against him because
No,
I told him
yeah,
I didn't want to go with him. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, yeah,
and then at the end of the night, he found me again, and we're walking around this big field. We're just hanging out, just as friends, like nothing weird, just
yeah,
we're just hanging out. And at the end of the night, I walked and I was standing behind my boyfriend at the time, and Elijah called me my name, and he was like, "Stacie." And he
mhm,
like whistled. He was like, like one of those louder,
yeah,
like
yeah,
FaceTime, "Hey, like, let me get your attention." Not like a cat
yeah.
call, just like, "Hey."
No,
Like,
yeah.
and my boyfriend is standing next to that girl, like right next to her, and he has me behind them. Like that's how crappy he was. Like
Oh my
I'm like
goodness.
not
Oh,
even next to him. Like I'm like behind
yeah.
him and he's standing with this other girl, his best friend. Like,
I'm so sorry, Stacy. You're third wheeling. Please take a
yes,
step back. That's
yes,
basic.
yes, exactly. I was literally behind them. And this was like the girl best friend, whatever. That BS,
Oh, that's a canon event. That was a canon event.
Yes. Yes. And so I'm like, whatever, Elijah's calling me over. I was like, he's not even gonna know I'm gone. We walked the whole field. The whole
Oh
field.
my
Like,
goodness.
we were talking, it was maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes I was gone. I
Oh
came
my
back
goodness.
and my presence, it was like I never left. It was like
Mm.
there was no time lapse. But right before I got back, Elijah was talking to me. He was like, "Hey, we're really good friends." And I just figured, seeing we're friends, like, I don't have your cell phone number. And he was like,
Mm.
"I should probably have that if we're friends." And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine." And he had a plan all along, you know what I mean? But
Yeah. He's playing the long
um,
game.
yeah, I was like, yeah, like, we are good friends. Like, you know my number. We had been friends for like a year almost at that point.
Mm.
And so he was like, cool. And he said, well, I'm gonna graduate soon. And I was like, yeah, I know. Um, and he was like, well, I just have to tell you, like, I'm not trying to sway you any kind of way. He said, I totally respect your relationship, but I feel like if I don't tell you now, I'm never gonna get the chance to. And he said, I do like you a lot. And um I was like, oh, and I didn't say
Yeah.
anything because I wasn't the type to jump from relationship to relationship.
Yeah.
And he said, so, I mean, we can stay friends. I'm not going to make it weird. I'm not going to like be up your back about it. But I just wanted to
Yeah.
share that with you because I might not get another chance to if I don't see you again after I
Yeah.
graduate. And there was only a couple months left. And he was like, all right, well, I guess I'll see you later. I'll see you
Yeah.
around. And I was like, all right, see ya. And
Oh
he
wow.
left and we parted ways. And then I texted him. I was like, hey, bro, like, I'm like still keeping it super casual,
You're
like,
making it very obvious.
yeah, like, I was like, yeah, I was not a girl to jump. I just didn't do
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
did not do that. And so we start texting, not in a weird way, but just friendly, we start talking a little bit more. I didn't break up with him at the time for that. I just
Yeah.
realized that he really wasn't a good boyfriend and that he
Mm.
wasn't being good to me at all. And so even like prom night sucked. Like, I went to prom with him. I just felt
Mm.
like it was a waste of a night. Like, I don't know. It was
Yeah.
just like a lot of things. And I remembered what Elijah said. He was like, "You're too beautiful to cry." Something about that. Not because like I was like in awe of Elijah or like falling for him or anything.
Yeah.
But when he said that, I almost felt like a spark looking back on it. I didn't know what the spark was, but it was like a spark of confidence, like something my mom would have said to
Would have
me.
said. Mm.
Yeah. And so I went, you know what? This is bull. I'm going to break up with
Yeah.
this boy. Like,
Yeah.
and so we ended it mutually. I was super kind about it. Um, I did cry a little, and this was one of the good times that I do remember my dad like kind of holding me, and because we did have really good moments too. They were a little far between, but
Yeah.
we had some. And this was one of the ones I broke up with him, and I said, I mean, I wanted it to end, but I felt that spirit of rejection again, only
Mm.
because of how easy it was for him to be like, yeah, this has been done for a while.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm the one that brought it up. I was like, let's be real. Like, do you really? And it was kind of like that situation I shared with you with the girl. Like, let's be real. We don't
Yeah.
really like each other that much.
Yeah.
Um, and I tried to be super respectful about it. Actually, he's the first boyfriend I ever broke up with. I'm pretty
Mm.
sure if another boyfriend watches this and I'm wrong, then I'm sorry. You know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But I like remember this breakup, you know what I mean? The other ones were like messy and it was like, how could you moments and like stuff like that, the
Yeah.
few that I had. This was like very mutual and mature. So I guess you could say if this wasn't my first boyfriend I broke up with, this was like my first mature breakup.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just don't think that we're really working, my guy. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's time to part ways. And we parted ways and I cried a little bit, but then I was quickly over it and I told Elijah, like, yeah, I broke up again. He didn't ask me on a date right away, but about a week later, he asked me on a date, and I told him no. And I was like, I don't want to rush. I was not the girl. Like, I think there was only like one time I went from one relationship straight into another one. And even when
Yeah.
I did, I was like, you can't tell anyone we're dating yet. Like, I'm not ready. Like,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
one to jump. And that was when I was quite a bit younger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was not. I didn't like jumping. I was very much so like a boyfriend type of girl most of the
Yeah.
time, besides like a few situations in my life where that was not the case. Um,
Yeah.
and it was more of like um just like, dating and like allowing too much with no title and like not respecting
Yeah.
myself. There were some times that I had like that where I wasn't respecting myself and like
Yeah.
I allowed boys to act like they were my boyfriend without actually having to call me their girlfriend or be loyal to me because everybody has that.
Yeah.
Everyone has a few stories like that, at least females, I feel. But I was very much so like I was a boyfriend type of girl. And I remember when I broke up, I was like, I don't want to date. I don't want to date. Like I
Yeah.
just want to focus on myself. I just want to have fun with my friends and I just want to hang out with Elijah because he's just chill. Like he's really nice to
Yeah.
me. And I didn't want anything romantic. I didn't want anything sexual. I was just like, I just wanted to hang out. And
Yeah.
so about a week later, he asked me on a date. And I said, no, I really don't want to rush. So he waited. He waited about another week. And he was like, so will you please, like, and I told him no. And then he asked a third time. I said no. So I rejected him 3 times. And this was like over a month or two of him like just waiting a little bit and then asking again. And then the fourth time he said, okay, I promise I will not ask again after this. And then
Mm.
I was like, oh, I don't like that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I was like, what
Like,
if I'm missing out?
wait a
Like this,
minute. What do you mean?
yeah. I was like, whoa, hold on. Um, and I was like, he is really nice to me.
Yeah.
But I was like just so tired. I was so tired of boys being nice to me and then thinking that they were owed something or
Yeah.
anything else. So I really gave Elijah a hard time. And
Mm.
he is the one that kind of sparked that confidence back in me
Yeah.
again. And I was like, no. Like I just like, but by this fourth time I was like, ugh. And I
Yeah.
told him, I said, fine, you get one date.
Yeah.
And I said that. I said, you get one singular date. And man, did he not disappoint. He said, what do you want to do? I said, you can take me to the school Grease play. And he said, oh my gosh, I love Grease. And I was like, no way. And he was like, yeah, it's like one of my favorite musicals, da 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 da. And I was like,
Yeah.
what the heck? And so we go. He actually wrote me a song and he sang it to me in the courtyard.
Oh.
And it was called I Don't Want to Rush. And he sang it to me. So if he wanted to, he would.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I
No,
mean?
no, but
And
seriously, yes.
yes. And we were singing, and we used to play this game, and it wasn't like, what would you do if, like, it wasn't like the sexual one that everyone else played. Ours was like, okay, the aliens are coming tomorrow. You have 6 hours. You have room for 10 items. Like, that's the kind of game we
Conversational things. No,
Yes, and
yes.
yes, and so we were doing that. We were laughing because we got there about an hour before. He was like, "Well, can we get there early? We'll hang out in the courtyard." I was like, "Yeah, sure. Why
Yeah.
not?" And so we're sitting there, and then he said, "Okay, I got one for you." And he looks at me and he said, "What would you do?" And then he said, "If I kissed you." So he asked, and I had not been asked.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that was like huge
Yeah.
for me. And I
Wow.
just looked at him and I was like, and I was like, and I'm like babbling because I'm like, I've never been asked before. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, I've never really been asked for consent like that before. Like, can I kiss you? And he looked at me and
Yeah.
he was like, can I? And I was like, and I just nodded. I was like, yes, like, and he waited. He
Yeah.
was looking at me like, I don't feel comfortable proceeding. Like, I haven't gotten an answer. And it was like everything I ever wanted it to be.
Mm.
and it felt like my first kiss all over again.
How
And then right
sweet.
after that, which my husband's, he's black, and at the time, my dad's fine with Elijah now. But at the time, during that time
Mm,
period, that was hard for people to digest still. And I'm not making
yeah.
excuses for my father. My father should not have acted that way.
Yeah.
But also we were in the South. It's not like we were up north
Yeah.
anymore, and it definitely was not accepted in the area we were in at all.
Mm,
Um, and so I looked at him and I knew it was, I only said this because I was afraid of getting in trouble. And I said, "Oh, by the way, you can't tell anyone about us." And my husband
mm.
shared with me later that like broke his heart. When I said
No.
that, I was like, "We're
Yeah.
together, but like you can't tell anyone about us." And we went
Yeah.
into the Grease play and we sang all the songs. We both put one hand like down in the seat and like we
Mm,
hooked pinkies because I didn't want to hold his hand in public. We
yeah.
like hooked pinkies. And then when
Yeah.
all the lights went out, we were all the way in the back and no one was back there, so I held his hand. And he sang every word of every song. Come to find out, I'm telling the story of like how I fell in love with him when we're married.
Yeah.
Um, and I said we really bonded over the fact that Grease was our favorite play. And he said, actually, that's not true. And I'm like, what do you mean? You sing all the songs. What are you talking about? And he said, no, I had actually never seen it. I went home and I learned all the songs so that I could sing them with you.
Oh my goodness. If he wanted to, he would.
Yes. And I was like, oh my goodness. And like, yes, he lied, but
He put
like
effort into it though. Like
full
it.
effort. He was like, I want her to have he had one date and he knew he only had one chance. You know what I mean? And like
As far as high
he
school dating goes with boys and lying, I feel like among all the lies that have ever been told, I think that
that's
might
the
be the
best one that
sweetest.
you could
Where
do.
he was like,
Yes.
"Oh, I love Greece." Immediately heads to the nearest store or any area that might
Yes.
carry any information on this, and like an
Yes.
exam, he's like, "I'm studying."
Yes, and, like, he watched it. He was even doing some of the dance moves. He was like, "Grease lightning," and, like, doing the thing, and
Oh my.
"How did you like, you really, like." And then it was funny because we had friends over, and the girls were over, and their husbands were over, and they all were like all the girls were like, "Oh," and all the husbands are looking at him like, "I'm gonna have to hear about this for 3 weeks now."
You look what
But
you did. Look what you did.
yes, and that I got married at 18. I moved out of my house when I was 17. Things just got so bad. I
Mm,
moved out the first time, moved in for 2 months. My dad wouldn't let me buy the car that I told him not to buy for me. He wouldn't let me buy it from him. It was a little bit
mm,
of a control thing. He wanted to keep me at home. But that Latin
yeah.
household, I'm sure you understand,
Yeah.
females stay at home. Like,
Yes.
it is they will do anything to not let you leave. Like, they will not let you move out. They will make it hard to move out, and it's a cultural
Oh
thing.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're Portuguese, and it's very similar to, like, the Hispanic. It's pretty much the same as far as that specific topic
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
Um, so and, like, did not want me to move out. Even tried to shut down my bank account when I did move out,
Oh
and
my god.
thankfully, I took all my money out.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's
I
like
went,
also when you know, like when you said you grow, like it's the culture,
you
so
know,
you know to expect things, and you to try to
you
take
know.
a step ahead, and you're like, I'm just gonna really quick get my money out because I know.
Yeah, exactly. And I moved out at 18, and Elijah and we didn't get married when I first moved out. We were engaged though. I did get engaged at 17. It was very young, but we've been together 10 years now. And the Lord has also restored our marriage completely. We
Mm,
almost divorced multiple times, and Elijah didn't know Jesus. He didn't know Christ, and he
mm,
now knows Christ. And I got a completely new husband after that. But a few months after I turned 18, I was living in this woman's house, and I wish I had her information because I was so young and dumb, and I probably should have appreciated everything she did for me a little bit more. But I was also just so broken at that
Mhm.
time. But she really set the footstones for the rest of my life, as far as
Yeah.
like I moved in with her. She didn't rush me out. Even when I went to go get married, she was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure." And she was like, "You can stay, you know that, right?" And I was like,
Mm.
I know, I
Yeah.
don't feel rushed out." And um, so I had 3 jobs. I tried really hard, like not to eat their food and stuff, which she didn't mind, and she would have me eat dinner with them a lot of the time and things like that.
Yeah.
But I had 3 jobs at one point, and then it was 2 jobs. I worked at a beef jerky outlet. That was one of the jobs I had. So I would sell beef jerky, like hundreds of
Oh, okay.
dollars of beef jerky. And to get my sales
Who
up,
would buy? Would you buy
oh,
it to like Walmart or was it like
no,
individual?
no, this was like a beef jerky store that like tourists would go into because this was in North Myrtle Beach.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my thing, if you kept your sales up, you didn't get commission, which was awful. I should have got commission, but you got more hours at work. So I was like
Yeah.
fighting because I was on my own, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I was really on my own. And so I was fighting. And
Yeah.
I would do this thing like if you buy $100 beef jerky from me, I'll do a backflip outside.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I would go do a round off back handspring every time
Oh,
someone.
is this when you broke your arm?
No, this was
Oh, okay.
after post, like I'm
Okay.
18 now. I broke my arm when
Okay.
I was like maybe it was right before my first day of high school, actually.
Okay. Oof.
So there
You
we
don't
go
have luck with
again with
first day.
like the I'm just messing up my first impression, like I was the girl that walked in and I had the broken arm and yep,
Mm,
yep.
story to tell. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it was just
So,
like, here we go again. I was like so used to it at this point. I fell off
yeah.
the balance beam. That's how I snapped my arm in half.
Oh my
But
gosh.
this was post that. I was now coaching gymnastics like a little bit in my extra free time, which I really didn't have any free time. Um, and I was getting paid for it. So that was one of my other jobs. And then I
Mhm.
used my gymnastics to get people because they're a tourist. They want to see a show. So I was like, I'm going to give them a
Yeah.
dang show. And I would
Yeah.
go tumble outside and on the pavement.
Oh,
Yeah, so I did that and I bought a car at 28% interest at 18 years
oh,
old.
girl.
I didn't have a choice, you know.
Yeah. No, I understand.
My car payment was $300. My insurance was $415. My car
Mm.
insurance. $415. When it dropped to,
Insurance is a scam.
yes. Oh my gosh. When it dropped down to 380, I was like, like, thank
I know.
God, like I was like, thank you, Jesus. And now we're entering marriage, and this is when the Lord really started to work on me. So this is where like the meat of my testimony for me starts. And
Mm.
I know it probably feels like, oh my gosh, how can this just be like the start of it? But this really is the start of it. So we are now married. We're having a hard time. I mean, a
Mm.
hard time. He gets me into bodybuilding. My husband was so supportive at the beginning, but neither one of us are reading the Bible. I didn't really like know, like I helped in the church and I loved that, but I didn't understand Jesus yet.
Yeah.
I still didn't how could I with everything I had experienced? I knew Jesus loved me, but it was like, oh, yeah, I believe in Jesus. And then I would go get drunk and I would get high and I was
Mm.
starting to use drugs and drink alcohol. And I'm starting to like try to numb my life. And I was so mean to my husband when we first got married because I was just like so broken. And my
Yeah.
husband felt like he just got this completely different person when we got married. But once you've experienced trauma, you it doesn't hit you until you're in a safe place and then it all comes spewing
Yeah.
out. I remember when I decided to go to therapy for the first time, my husband and I got in this spewing argument. We're screaming at each other, and he has never raised a hand to me. I mean, we've like chucked things at each other in our younger years, but we've been together for
Yeah.
10 years. Like, we've definitely done inappropriate things toward each other, but we were so young, and it never transpired in like hitting or anything
Mm.
like that. It was more so just like more like restraining each other and like
Yeah.
being like, oh, like just
Yeah.
so pent up with like aggression and anger toward like both of us. And half the time it was me. Like
Yeah.
I would smack his arm hard, like way faster. Like he would never do that to me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not even gonna lie, like I was awful to him at the beginning of our marriage, but I was so broken. And I will never forget this day. It's what made me get into therapy. We're arguing, we're yelling, and he starts talking with his hands. He's like so upset. He's like raising his hands. He's like going like this, you know what I mean? Just yelling. I black out and I saw my father's face. And I just
Mm.
saw like raising like he's gonna hit me. And I
Mm.
saw my dad. And then the next thing I know, I came to and Elijah's holding me down on the couch. And he's like,
Mm.
Stacie, hey, hey, hey. And he's like, won't let me go. I'm like looking around, like, what? Get off me, get off me. I'm like, why are you holding me down? Like, now I'm triggered. And
Yeah.
I, you know, I didn't know why I was so triggered on my back because that memory hadn't came back
Yeah.
yet. But being on
Yeah.
my back like that on the couch freaked me out. And I was like, get off of me.
Yeah.
I was gone. Like I had no recollection of what just happened. And he said, why did you do that? I said, what are you talking about? He said, you don't remember, do you? And I was like, no, like, what are you talking about? Like, what is happening? And he said, honey. And he just looked at me. I was like, what? Like,
Yeah.
so confused. And he said, you grabbed me by my throat.
Mm.
And I had grabbed him like this because I saw that. And I guess
Mm.
that was my body's reaction. It went into fight. And my body said, no, like, we're not doing this
Yeah.
again. And
Mm.
I don't remember it. To this day, I can't even see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And thankfully, I would have beat the crap out of me. Like, I love my husband so much. I can't believe he didn't beat me to a pulp. Like,
After you, yeah.
like imagine someone's choking you out and you just
Yeah.
restrain them and then comfort them.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, looking back on it, I'm
Yeah.
so glad he didn't because it probably would have ended our marriage, of course. But
Yeah. But you at that time would have probably reacted differently than he did.
oh my
Which
gosh, like I told him I would not have been mad if
mm.
he literally beat the crap out of me because like how could you not freak out and like self-defense like hit the person that's choking you out? And he
Yeah.
didn't. He didn't at all. Like I had no marks, I had no headache, I had nothing, I had no pain. I was just on the couch and nothing happened.
Mm.
Like I just remember seeing my dad and I remember leaning forward but I don't remember like I
Yeah.
thought I was going like this. I didn't know that I grabbed him by his neck. Um
Mm.
and I believe him. He'll tell you like to this day, like, yeah, like, but I grabbed him by his neck and that's when I was like, okay, I need help.
Mm.
I got into therapy at that point and a lot of brokenness started to come out and um my husband was struggling with addiction. I was struggling with addiction. Him not so much drugs. He's, with his job, that's not an option. But
Yeah.
me, I was like starting to smoke pot. I was um I never did acid, thankfully, but I was thinking about it and I was like I was drinking, I was smoking, I was like never here. I was high at work, I was driving around high, I was like doing all the things. And
Mm.
I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which the Lord later delivered me from. I've been off medicine for 5 years. I don't
Mm.
need anything now. that song that says, I've seen cancer disappear, I've seen mental health restored. Don't you tell me he can't do it. That is my
Oh
story.
god.
And
Mm.
I've seen addicts finally free. I've been sober. September will be a year of me being no more
Mm.
marijuana. Like, if I have a glass of wine, it's like a one, and then I get a headache, and I don't
Yeah.
even keep it in the house, like I've been sober now for
Wow.
almost a year completely. And the Lord worked on me with that for a long time. But when I first got into therapy, after almost a year of being in therapy, I was still heavily in contact with my dad, which was not good for me at the time.
Mm.
And I got to
Yeah.
this place where I felt like such a burden to my husband. I felt like a failure. I felt like everyone would be better off if I wasn't here.
Mm.
So, but I didn't want to cause any more pain than I already had caused. So I decided I was going to make it look like I had a bad car accident and I lost control of my vehicle.
Mm.
So I took my car out one day and I had a plan to end my life. I was driving down the
Mm.
highway and no one was on the road. I tried to make sure that no one was out there when I did it, and thankfully no one was, because I was still going to do it either way in my
Mm.
head.
Yeah.
And um, because I knew like I couldn't take this anymore and I didn't want to cause anyone any more pain. And I knew me dying would cause a little bit of mourning, but it would be better in the long run, especially if people thought it was an accident. And it just
Mm.
happened to be that that's what happened, you know?
Yeah.
And so I took my car, and this old Pontiac G6 that needed a heavy alignment, like she was whipping to
Oh,
the right on her phone. You know what I mean? Like this was my
yeah.
28% interest beater car, my lemon,
Yeah.
that just did not, um,
Yeah.
like it was, she was not in good shape. Everything on her was
Yeah.
broken and leaking, and I still owed like $8,000 on her. Like it was
Gosh, that's
awful.
the
They did me
worst.
so dirty. And, the dealer did me so dirty. But anyway, I'm driving and I knew my car needed a heavy alignment. And this is where Jesus really started to enter my life. Um, I closed my eyes. The radio was off, and that part's important, but the radio was off, and I was driving and I noticed no one was out there. I was ready, and I said, God, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Because
Mm.
the Catholic belief is you're going to go to hell if you kill yourself, and that's what I was still sitting with.
Mm.
Which I think that God has mercy on a tortured soul. I do. I think he has mercy on a tortured soul. From my own personal experience. Anyone else has an opinion about that? That's fine. But that's from my experience. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm driving. I went, all right. And I foot to the floor with
Mm.
the gas. My seatbelt was unbuckled. I closed my eyes and I let go of the wheel. And I'm waiting because I was thinking I'm going to hit the concrete barrier. I'm probably going to flip. I'm going to fly out of the windshield, right? And they're going to be like, she didn't put her
Mm.
seatbelt on. What a shame. You know,
Mm.
that was
Yeah.
like my thought in my head. Like, oh, what a
Yeah.
shame. She didn't put her seatbelt on. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is it. And so I closed my eyes. I let go. And all of a sudden I feel the car pulling back like super heavily. And I'm like, this is it. I had a moment of fear. So I opened my eyes and I'm like, I'm like, this
Yeah.
is it. I'm about to die.
Yeah.
And I look and the car was still perfectly in line with the lane.
Mm.
And
Wow.
it's coming to a stop. And so I'm like looking around, and now I'm like having a moment of clarity, and I put my hands on the wheel, and I just
Yeah.
I put my hazards on, I put my hands on the wheel, and I'm having this moment where I'm back for a moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden the radio's on. And
Mm.
not only is it on, it's on the local Christian radio station.
Mm.
And
Wow.
I don't remember what song it was, but I just hear, "You're not alone. I'm with you and I love you."
Mm. Mm.
And
Wow.
I'm like, you know, I'm like not here. I'm like not even processing that that's what I'm hearing fully yet. Like, so
Mm.
I'm like, what the heck? Like, how am I alive
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah.
Like, I should be dead. Like, brain on the pavement. I know that's
Yeah.
graphic, but like
Yeah.
I should not even be in this seat. How am I
Yeah.
here? How did my car go straight? My
Yeah.
car, I mean like
No, I
pulling.
to
Like the
keep
minute
it.
I let go, she would go out of the lane. Like I
Yeah.
learned how to drive with my left hand. Now I only drive with my left hand because my Pontiac pulled that bad
Oh my
that
god.
I would drive with this hand down here and this hand up here. Like,
Yeah.
and somehow I'm in a straight line. And the Christian radio station was on. And I was like
Yeah.
not knowing what to do. I call my husband and I
Wow.
tell him, "Hey, something's wrong with my car. It won't go over
It's
5
driving
miles an
straight.
hour now." Yeah, well, I didn't even tell him that. I'm still
Yeah.
thinking like, because I'm like trying to get it to go. I'm like, no, what the heck? Why isn't it? And I'm still having a moment
Mm.
like, am I gonna do it? Like, I'm still not like all the way present. Like, I had
Yeah.
enough to like grab the wheel, but now I'm embarrassed, right? And
Mm.
I'm like calling him. I'm like, oh, something's wrong with my car. It won't go over 5 miles an hour. I don't know. I got off the highway, pulled into a Walmart parking lot in Augusta, Georgia. That's where we were at the time. Because we're a family, we're a service family,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Well, what happened? What do you mean? What is happening? What is happening?" And he's like, "What do you mean? Like, why won't it go over 5 miles an hour?" And he just keeps asking all these like very prodding questions. I felt
Yeah.
at the time that they were very prodding, and I was trying to dodge his questions, but I couldn't, and I was so mentally like
Mm.
unable to process anything. And so finally I broke down and I said, he said, well, how did that happen? What did you do? Da, 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 da. Like, how did you get here? And I was like, all right. And I told him what I did.
Mm.
The minute I told him what I did, my car started working completely fine.
Wow.
Yeah. Like nothing was wrong. We
Wow.
didn't even take it to the shop. Like nothing was wrong with it. And he said, I want you to come home. And we talked
Mm.
about it. He said, when you go to therapy tomorrow, I think you should tell your therapist. And he said at the time he didn't fully like mentally grasp what I had told him.
Yeah.
So like he didn't understand fully that like I had truly tried to end my own life.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad he told me to tell my therapist because she said, you're going to have to leave your car here. We're going to call your husband. And I'm sure he was in shock, you know what I mean? Like not able to
Yeah.
process. Like my wife just tried to commit suicide. Like there's
Yeah.
no way that that's what she just told me, Okay, so maybe she's having suicidal thoughts. Like, let's get you back.
Yeah.
Tell your therapist. Let's talk about it. Like, like
Yeah.
I think he did an amazing job. Like,
Yeah.
and so she pulls him into the office and she tells him, Stacey's car's staying here. You have an option. I can call the ambulance, or you guys can take her and you can have the hospital call when you get there because she said, I do trust you. She cannot drive herself, but she said she's willing to admit herself into the hospital. And my
Mm.
therapist, she was amazing. She was amazing. We're still friends.
Mm.
Like now that I'm not her
Yeah.
patient anymore, we're now friends.
Mm.
And she said, I need you to take her to the hospital. And if I don't hear from you in the next 45 minutes, I will have to call the police on you.
Yeah.
And she made it very clear everything we needed to do. She said, I can allow you to take her, but if I do not hear from you in this allotted amount of time, because it takes this long to get to the hospital, I'm giving you guys like this much time, just,
Yeah.
I will have to call the police because she needs to be evaluated. She did try
Mm.
to commit suicide. And so we went, we listened, and I had my therapist write out a letter because I couldn't speak. I was so embarrassed and so shameful, and like now my husband has to go through this, and he didn't tell me at the time. We talked about this much later, but it gave him so much anger. Like, how could you try to take yourself away from me? And it made him feel like nothing that he did, no matter how good of a husband he tried to be, it made him feel like a failure because he's the provider of our home. And he wasn't a Christian at the time. You know, like he didn't even know God. So he just had to sit with the shame that I had inflicted because of what I did. And I got help, and our marriage was very rough from there on out. He was very supportive of my mental health, and he tried to be there for me, but we almost divorced so many times. Like, I left once and moved in with my brother Michael again, and then we came back, and we had this amazing therapist. I can't remember her name, in New York, and she talked to Elijah, and we worked through his resentment, and she was real with him, and she was like, honestly, you're being unfair. Like, you're valid for being hurt. This is not something easy to go through. This is not something easy to process. The way she's acted toward you in the past, everything makes sense, but like, you're being, you know, and like she shed some light on his side, and as I was trying to heal, and God rejuvenated our marriage after about 5 years.
Wow.
It took about 5 years. We almost ended it for 5 years. He did not want to be married to me anymore. This was not the Stacie he knew in high school. This was not me.
Yeah.
And him knowing Christ now has been the biggest blessing, something I prayed for. Because now he cultivates me. And every day, I'm still not who I was. But every day, I get closer to being back to that little girl that was untouched. And the Bible says, your husband is supposed to walk you with work. And we still get angry with each other. Like, he has a testimony of his own that is like, to the sky. Like, you know what I mean? Neither one of us have had a walk in the park. So glad these paper towels are here. No, my
Yes.
nose is running. But for the
Wow.
longest time, he was operating outside of Christ, and I tried so hard not to push. It's so crazy to look back. Like, I could just see whatever was attached to him blocking his vision really did, like, they knew. They
Yeah.
knew what was going to come of our life and our testimony, and like
Yes.
how amazing. And like, this isn't even everything we've been like, our marriage, that is a testimony in itself. Like, but we're just talking about me today. But oh my gosh, when I tell you, this man, I have been so broken for so long, and with him not operating in Christ, like, if any female out there is listening still, it makes a difference. I could not, there are things that would not come off of me that are now coming off because he put his faith in Jesus, and because now he's able to wash me with the word of God.
Wow.
And he is renewing my soul because of his faith now. And I get to become a new creation. I get to be fully redeemed now because of his walk with me.
Wow. So
And
beautiful.
I suck at letting him know that. So if he watches this fully, which it's so long, so I don't know if he will.
No, I think what I'll do, because this episode is so chock-packed and so good, I think we're going to
Break
do
it
a
into parts.
two-parter. I'm going to do it a two-parter because I don't want to cut anything out. I already
Yeah.
don't like cutting anything out, period. And I like to keep it authentic. So this baby's going to be a two-parter. And we have enough breaks to make it a two-parter.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it might be a three-parter at this point.
No, but I mean, from childhood to everything you talked about leading up to 11 to everything you talked about leading up to 14 to, like, this is
Oh,
so
yes.
packed. It's so
And
packed. And
and one thing I hadn't even touched on yet is during that time, like when Christ saved my life, I still didn't get it, but like I knew he did it. I knew he was the one who did it. So I started
yes.
going to church. But ever since that happened to me, and then like the way I was looked at, like young girls are looked at, I was very over sexualized. I was very immodest. Um, in my adulthood, and Elijah actually expressed to me how uncomfortable he was with it, and I completely disregarded his feelings.
Mm,
I actually got into modeling, and I was with an agency out of Charlotte. Um, and then before that, my freelancing, I wasn't naked, but it was highly inappropriate. It
mm,
was very sexually driven. It was very like sensual and sexy and highly inappropriate. And I had no respect for my body. That was something I was still trying to learn. And that's something that Elijah has not forced me to do at all, like change the way I dress
mm,
or stuff like that. He has tried for years, and it wasn't until this year that like I actually got it. Ever since he's been walking with the Lord, like the way the Holy Spirit allowed him to like articulate it
mm,
to me in a
yeah.
non-controlling way and like got me to see my true value and how precious and beautiful my body is and how important it is to protect
Mm,
that, because not everyone looks at it with value. And as much as I
mm,
think I look good and stuff like that, and as much as I will 100% say you should not be sexualized in that way, you shouldn't be. But guess what? They're going to do it anyway. And I would much
mm,
rather protect what belongs to my husband, protect what belongs to me. And in
mm,
doing that, and in this modesty walk, after literally, I have photos and like even my husband, the things we walked through before we both truly accepted Christ, the
yeah.
experiences we've had together, and the mistakes that we've made as a couple.
Yeah.
And like how immodest I used to be, and how much I would just disregard my body as
Mm,
anything valuable and anything more than just objective. And oh, it's just a butt. It's just my boobs. It's just this. It's just that.
yeah.
It's not like that. Your body is valuable. It is the most valuable. Wars were started because of the female body. Like
Yeah.
men started wars. David lost his throne because of the
Mm,
beauty of the female body.
yeah.
Well, he
Yeah.
lost his right. And his
Yeah.
sons, thankfully, God was, that whole story. Go read the
Merciful.
story of David if you
Yeah.
haven't. That's for the viewers. You have to understand the fullness of it.
Yeah.
But he lost a lot because of the female body. And the Lord started to do a work in me with that through my husband, and through
Mm,
my husband washing me in the word and him laying it out to me in such a gentle and beautiful way to where I could absorb it and understand it. And I
mm,
feel like every day since he stood up in church and made a declaration of faith, hasn't been baptized yet. I'm excited for that day. I know the Lord's going to do it. He that
mm,
starts a good work in you is faithful to finish it. He got baptized in basic
mm,
training, but he didn't,
yeah.
he wasn't really Christian, you know what I mean? Like he didn't understand it. He didn't
Yeah.
live by it. He didn't even read it, you know?
Yeah.
But he made a proclamation of faith and he stood up. And ever since that day he stood up, he's been standing up for our family.
Awesome.
And he has honored me, and he's been open and honest. And through his openness and honesty, God has cleansed our marriage through the things
Mm,
that happened while we were married, while we weren't married, that the Lord brought into the light. And
mm,
now he leads a Bible study for men and learning how to be the leader of your home. and
Oh,
learning what
good.
that looks like. And these are prayers
Wow.
that I prayed. Yesterday was 1 month of him being free from smoking cigarettes. Like,
Mm,
I mean, that's a huge one.
yeah.
But have you, like, he's not in, he struggled with alcoholism. Like, he's honest about it with everyone. He's free of addiction. I'm
Wow.
free of addiction. We live, we get drunk on the word and high on the praises of the Lord. Like, I know that sounds so crazy, but like, we were addicts and like we were
Mm,
set free. And it just makes that song like rings so true in my
mm,
head. I've seen broken bodies healed. I've seen metal plates dissolve. I haven't seen that one yet, but I have seen broken bodies healed, like
mm,
miraculously, my own at that.
yeah.
And if it wasn't for my friends Candace and Corey
Mhm.
leading, like allowing God to use them to lead us into this next part of our life, and the fellowship that we have with my church. Um, oh my, shout out to Cross Point, and just the the amount of, like, a family has been restored, a bloodline has been
Mm,
restored.
yeah.
Like,
Wow.
God has just restored so much. And when I got baptized, thankfully, Mercy Point was the name of the church. It was a northern, it wasn't Southern Pentecostal where like they don't cut their hair and they do the snakes. This was like
Yeah.
Northern Pentecostal. And which some Southern Pentecostals, they don't do that either. But I always thought,
Yeah.
I just want people to know it's not like what you think a Pentecostal church where like they have the snakes in the basket and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
it was a Pentecostal church, and they had such a gift of the Spirit. And Pastor Nicole and her husband, oh my gosh, what is his name? Why am I blanking? Best pastors I've ever had. They were ex-drug addicts, so like I really related to them.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I got baptized at that church way before my husband even, like, he would get mad when I was watching a sermon on the TV. Like, that's how much the Holy Spirit was after him. Like, the devil would, like,
Wow.
instill anger and be like, God, like, be mad at your wife, yell at your wife, because she's watching a
Yeah.
sermon. Like, the devil was after
Yeah.
our family. He did not want this to come to pass. And God gets all the glory. When I got baptized, they let us share a little piece of our testimony, and I got to tell them that, in 2017, I tried to take my own life. And one thing I
Mm,
said was, I chose death, but God said, no,
mm,
I chose life for you. And so when
mm,
I got baptized, I said, so now I get to choose life and I get to
mm.
choose him. And he loves
Wow.
me and I can feel that. And I got to do the full submerge, and I got a video. Like, I didn't even know they were going to video it. I was just excited to be
Mm,
baptized and I was just ready, but they videoed it and I get to cherish that forever. February
wow.
3rd is my second birthday. That is like my
Yeah.
birth into new life, and I was still smoking pot. I was still drinking during that time. I was still going out and partying, but I was on fire for Jesus at that point, and
Yeah.
I am here to tell anyone, if you're still struggling with addiction, don't let the devil get you down. Every time you do, or you're still struggling with that lifestyle, run to the Lord in prayer. Like, he still loves you. I would sit in my word. I would be in the club telling people about Jesus, as I probably, my actions may have not been showing him as much, but I was still on fire. Like, the
Yeah.
Lord was starting a good work in me, and he's faithful to finish it, and he is finishing it, and it's extending to my husband, who
Yeah.
I didn't know. I had to be okay with that verse in Peter that says, if you're married to a non-believer, don't, or maybe
Mm,
it's Colossians, it might be Colossians. If you're
yeah.
married to a non-believer, don't divorce them, for I've made them clean through your faith.
Yeah.
But if they leave you, let them go. And Elijah was like I told you, like, there was a point where I didn't know if we were going to be married. I
Yeah.
didn't, and I fought for him. I was like, I will not be, and I told him so many times. He was like, why don't you just leave me? And I was like, I will not be the one to leave. I was like, the Lord
Mm.
told me not to leave. I love you. I want to be married to you. I'm not leaving. And I sat there and I wouldn't, and he never left. And now we're here, and the blessings are
Wow.
just, my
So
relationship with my
beautiful.
father has been restored. My best friend Jamie is now walking in sobriety, and
Wow.
she's starting to walk that out, and she's been open and transparent. My best friend Candace, literally prayed for her. She lives here where I am currently, and
Mm.
she prayed over me. The devil tried to take me out with asthma when I was going to get my cosmetology license, because I told you, and I'll share that before we go, about
Yeah.
what the Lord has put on my heart. Because now we're at that point, coming to the end of
Yeah.
this, and but I had horrible asthma out of nowhere. I had horrible asthma when I was younger, but it left my body, and it returned with vengeance. I was in and out of the ER. I was having
Mm.
2 violent asthma attacks a day at one point.
Mm.
Um, there was at one point I went through an albuterol inhaler in a 2-week period. Like,
Mm.
it was really, really bad. I was on steroids. I was I was taking all this medication. Um, I was still, at that moment, I was free. No, I had stopped using marijuana. I used CBD for inflammation of my
Mm.
lungs and stuff like that. And that doesn't get you high, thankfully. Like,
Yeah.
God did make herbs for the service of men. There is a
Yeah.
time and there's a place, and um I've since, it's so
Mm.
cool when you're an addict and you can go back and start using things medicinally, like in a healthy
Yeah.
way. God has given me so much freedom in that. But Candace was praying over me because her husband said it first, Corey. He said, the Lord can heal you from asthma. And I was like, yeah, yeah. And I had healed. I had experience, like, where I prayed, and my best friend Jamie, I was at her house, I was visiting, and she spilled boiling hot water all over her arm. And it was literally
Mm.
welting. And she was so frustrated. We were going through so much during that time. It was the middle of COVID. I went to visit because in New York you had to quarantine for 2 weeks, but I didn't mind. I
Yeah.
went and visited, I came back and I quarantined. And but I
Yeah.
really wanted to see her, and I was in a position where I could. And she was going through so much, and I spilled she spilled boiling hot water all over her arm, and it was welting. I said, come here, we're going to pray right now. I'm going to believe in the name of Jesus. So I prayed over her hand, and I kid you not, we watched the welts go away.
Wow.
And she had no burn
Wow.
in her arm. And I believe I had shared that with Corey. If not, he was speaking from a place of faith,
Yeah.
regardless. And he said, the Lord can do it for you. And so one night I was sitting, it was just me, Candace, and Corey at their house. And we're just talking, we're all hanging out. And I was talking about my asthma. And Corey said, let's pray right now. And I was like, Corey, I don't know. And Candace was like, no, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so we started praying over each other. And Candace, she was praying over me. And I felt this heat come from her into my chest.
Wow.
And ever since that day, I literally felt in my lungs, like in my entire lungs, this heat, this hot, like this refining fire. It literally felt like
Yeah.
my lungs, it felt like I was in a fire. That's how
Mm.
hot it felt, but it didn't hurt. At the same
Mm.
time, it did not hurt, but it felt
Wow.
like you put your hand in a fire. Like, if you've ever put your hand over a flame and like it burned you, that's how hot it was, but with no pain. And
Mm.
that was just the refining fire of the Lord. And I felt that come through her hand. And I felt her hand get really warm. And then I felt the fire just come right into my chest. And I felt it
Mm.
engulf my lungs. And from that day, I didn't have a single asthma attack. I stopped using all my medication. I kept it just in case, but I was like, I believe the Lord has healed me. No
Wow.
more steroid inhaler, no more regular inhaler, um, nothing. Like, and
Come
I have
on.
not had a single issue since. Not had a
Wow.
single issue since. And
Beautiful.
leading up to that, oh my gosh, what was I saying? I was saying
You
something.
You were
Oh, my
talking
mini
about how the cosmetology and everything.
yes, and I met her there, and, but that was such a sidetrack, but it was such a miracle. I had just had to
No,
share it.
beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
There's a big purpose God has on my life, and He has put that on my heart for a long time. I shared it with you on the phone, and your reaction just ignited my faith even stronger. And I know you talked about setting up a GoFundMe. I'm going to read the legalities of that because I don't want to do it
Yeah,
incorrectly. But
yeah,
I
understandably.
will let you know when it's up because I know that you said
Please.
you would love to share this with people, and I hope people
Yeah,
want to get behind it. Experiencing
absolutely.
the homelessness and the poverty that I did when I was younger, um, and then, when my mother passed away, that's really what ignited my love for hair. And I know that sounds funny, but when I started gymnastics, my stepmom is amazing. She is a godsend. She's an amazing stepmother. She's an amazing individual. And I love Cindy so much. And I'm always grateful for her. And I gave her such a hard time when I was younger. And I'm just glad that she knew how to deal with it because I
Mm,
needed a very strong woman, a very, very, very strong woman in my life. Um,
mm,
to force me to pick it up by the bootstraps and get my crap together. And she did that
yeah.
for me as much as we would just hit. And I think the reason we hit so hard, and I think the reason I would get so mad at her, like madder at her than I would at anyone else, is because the Lord was using her to work something out of me that I would have fallen
Mm,
into if she would not have been there. But when I started gymnastics, Cindy is like, she can do a ponytail and she can do a bun. And that's it. Like when I went into gymnastics, I have thicker hair. It's a
yeah,
little thinner as I've gotten older, but I had really, really long, thick hair when I was a young girl. And the buns and the ponytails were not cutting it. It was falling down. And when it falls down in gymnastics, you get points taken off.
yeah,
My mom knew how to French braid. I wasn't in gymnastics when she was alive. We could never afford stuff like that. I
yeah,
always wanted to do it though. So my dad was like, "You're going to do it. Like you're going to do it."
yeah.
And it took off. I loved it. It was a huge part of my life. And it was one of the reasons I am who I am today. Um, but my hair kept falling down. I'm getting points taken off. Some of the other
Yeah,
moms would sometimes do my hair, but they didn't always have time. And they knew like my situation. And also, my
yeah,
stepmother worked nights, so it wasn't even like she could take the time to learn. She was never at my gym. Well, not never. She was at a lot of my really big gymnastics meets that were a big deal.
yeah.
She would take off of work. But a lot of them she had to miss because she was on night schedule. She was a emergency operating room nurse. She was like a
Mm,
trauma center nurse. She was in the trauma
yeah,
unit. Very intensive job. So she just couldn't be there all the time for things like that. And, but my dad always was, and he didn't know how to he didn't even know how to do a ponytail. So I would be pulling it up myself and just hoping it didn't fall
yeah,
down. And, um, oh gosh, and it always did, always fell down. So I took to YouTube and I was like, I'm going to learn how to French braid because my mom French braided my hair, never fell down when she French braided it. So I started to learn how to French braid and I started to learn how to like French braid up the back and just do all these things.
mm,
And before you knew it, it was something I really enjoyed. And then my friends were like, "Oh my gosh, your hair looks really cute. Can you do that to mine?"
yeah,
And these were my teammates. So I started doing their hair. And then I started watching, well, how do you curl hair? So I started doing that. And then I was like, well, how do you do an updo? And I would do these elaborate updos just to go to school. I would wake up at like 5 a.m. and curl my hair and like pin it like in a side bun and have it
yeah,
like super curly just because I just loved doing it. And it was a big outlet for me. That and painting was like a huge outlet. But this specifically was like my thing. As I got older, I
mm,
got into makeup and like special effects makeup and learning how to do that. And I just fell in love with all of it. Before you knew it, I was doing my best friend's hair for prom and their makeup for prom. And I was doing everybody's everything. And all the moms. My dad wasn't super supportive at the time because at the time hairdressers didn't make a lot. They make a lot more now. They do a lot better now. You know,
Oh,
you're a
yeah.
hairdresser, or you were.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they do great now. But before, you know, he was definitely worried about that. So he was like, "No, you need to go to college. Like, just
Yeah.
go get a degree." And but I always loved hair, and I fought him on it, and eventually he came around to it, but I moved out before, you know, it could come
Yeah.
into fruition. But as I got older, I tried pharmacy tech, I tried occupational therapist because everyone's telling me just go get a degree. I'm like, I guess, all right, I guess I'll go get a degree. Never finished. Never, like, it never worked out. And then I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? When I get the chance, I'm going to go to cosmetology school. Once we fought through the hardships of our marriage, my husband said to me, when we move, it's your turn. He said, you
Mm.
have not gotten the opportunity to go and do this. And I was 24 when I finally started school. So
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
finished last year. I've been a cosmetologist for almost a year now. But I
Mm.
was always practicing. All my friends, all the army wives at Fort Drum and everywhere else I went, if they had a special event, Stacie, will you do my makeup? Will you do my updo? So I was
Yeah.
doing it. I would cut my friend's hair. My friend Laura, she would let me do all kinds of crazy colors. I had the rainbow all the time, like all over my head, you know, just
Yeah.
dyeing my hair, and I was learning. And so I had a pretty good foothold when I got into school, which is what I have a lot to learn, but
Yeah.
it's given me a lot of success up to this point because I don't have a lot of confusion as far as the process. You know how it
Yeah.
is that you need to build that rhythmic technique.
Yeah.
Being a hairdresser has so much rhythmic technique.
Yeah.
And that's really what'll make or break you. You have to find your rhythm. You have to find your movement. And
Yeah.
I've been blessed with an amazing salon um, here in the area. It's called Tangles. If anyone ever wants to come out, it's in North Carolina. I'm sure you'll find it. You'll find if you're meant to find me, you'll find me. But everyone in the salon has like 10 years of experience, so I can just soak everything up.
Yeah.
And the Lord, for a long time, even before I got my license, He gave me a vision. And He said, you're going to have a ministry. It's going to be a salon. I'll
Mm.
drop the name when I'm ready to drop the name. Um,
Mm.
but it's uh it's going to be predominantly a homeless ministry at first. The building
So
will have
good.
showers in the back. There'll be a closed off section with a door, but like with a lock. And
Yeah.
they'll be able to shower in the back, separate male and female showers in the back. I want them to be able to come through, get an outfit, new outfit, put it on, get a fresh haircut after
Mm.
their
Yeah.
shower. And then I want to have live interviews
Yeah.
every so often with businesses that are willing to partner with me.
Yeah.
And they'll be aware that these people are homeless. I'm sure along the way I'll run into people that can help with housing and things like that for these people. But I
Uh,
realized our
Let me know because I actually have someone at church who helps with homeless housing. She recently started working
yes,
on something
that
like
would
that.
be
So,
amazing. And I would love to have a little office space where, you know, they can have interviews with people that they're thinking about working with. They can find the right fit for them, and also resources to help. So every haircut, everything that people do, every time someone gets their color done, it's all going straight back there. Of
yeah.
course, you know,
Wow.
some of it will be just for me to survive, but
Understandably.
everything will be sent back there. And um, at the front, you know, just like you leave your gratuity for your style or your gratuity for your stylist, I'd love to have another question on the screen. Do you want to give an extra amount for
Yeah.
the back, for the
Yeah.
behind the scenes of what we're doing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it'll be an amazing thing later on. And my best friend Jamie has already talked about this. Her and I, like, being ex-addicts, and then she came, her story, I have to connect you with her
Yeah, I was gonna
because
say, please give her my number.
she grew up. Okay, so I'll just say this. In high school, I remember when her house got raided when
Mm,
we were kids for drugs. And
mm,
her testimony is,
amazing.
it makes mine look like a walk in the park, and that's crazy to say. You know what I'm saying? And she would
Yeah.
never say that, but this woman has just been,
Wow.
oh gosh, like the way that God has moved in her life and in
Yeah.
her marriage,
You
and
can really see all
through
that
our
God is
friendship.
doing in your
Yes,
life and in the lives of those around you just so strongly. It's very,
yes.
very beautiful.
We would love to have a part of it. Eventually, her and I want to connect, and she has ideas, from cafes to little bookstores and then little like herbalistic,
Yeah.
like natural med. We have so many ideas, but we want to help people who are coming out of recovery or going in, help sponsor them to go into recovery, and then also offer them kind of like how Pitbulls and Parolees does it, offer
Yeah.
them a place where
Yeah.
they can come. And another thing really laid on my heart, if I ever expand enough to be able to do this, this would be a godsend. Or if I can partner with a school to do this, one thing my mother did before she passed away was she worked in group homes
Mm,
for, young girls. And these women, these young women would become like sisters to me. Like I was like
mm,
their little sister, and we would see them, but then once they hit of age, some of them we would see every so often and they were doing
mhm.
okay. But a lot of them, and it was hard then, it's even harder now to be on your own and
Yeah.
to not have family and to not have like a career path set up. A lot of them we would never see again. And I still think to this day, like, what happened to her? What happened to them? Like,
Yeah.
are they
Yeah.
okay? And one thing I would love to do is get with some educators and offer
Wow.
apprenticeships to young girls who are in those group homes so that they can have their cosmetology license by
Yeah.
the time they leave.
Yeah. So good. Yeah.
Because
That's really good.
if they can come in, and we can do it probably over a longer amount of time, but you can apprentice
Yeah.
in North Carolina. And
Yeah.
if we can start them on that, then they have something
You should
when
look
they graduate
into I don't
when
know
they
if your salon works on that, and I can give you more information on it, but like when you do the Summit Salon system is really good. I don't know if you
we
heard of them,
actually
but
use that.
yeah, they're very great. They'd have
That's
like the whole
awesome.
associates program, they have a whole system, they have a whole like just a whole educational. That's what I
I'll have
did
to
when
talk
I
to my
became.
boss about it because we
Yeah.
already have Summit, so she may.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's what I did. I was an associate in that and then I grew into it and leveled up and all that great stuff. I personally, for me, it was great. I loved the order of it. You knew what you were getting into, you knew what to expect, you knew what was expected of you, you knew your pay grade. Like everything was laid, there was no room for surprise because it was so
Right.
transparent for them
It's
and
very
yourself.
transparent. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of that being said, wow, just what an amazing testimony of what God has done with your pain. And before I wrap all of this up and we end on such an amazing, amazing interview, just to stay on theme, what would you say over like just to end it today? What has God done with your pain? Like with everything that you've shared, where you are now, like what has he done with every ounce of pain that you have felt to where you are now?
God has taken my pain, and not only has He restored everything tenfold, He has given me an unshakable faith.
Mm,
There's this Christian rap song that says, God is looking for spiritual snipers. And
mm,
we need that more than ever. Jesus is coming back, and he's coming back soon. And if this
yeah.
generation would stand up and be bold and not be afraid of the ridicule and criticizing and of the abuse because you're going to experience it. I'm a prime example. The devil tried to take me out. And
Mm,
now that I'm on the other side of it, there is nothing that he could do to keep me from spreading the gospel. And he knows he's trembling in his boots because I made it out alive.
mm,
The biggest thing I can say that God did with my pain is he turned me into a warrior for his kingdom.
mm. Wow.
He
Could
turned me
not have
into
worded
a
that better.
frontliner. I am on the front. I'm not at the
Wow.
back. And I
You
will
are
stay on the
head
front.
first.
Yeah, I'll stay
I
in the
love that.
front. I will take the bullets while the rest of everybody else figures it out.
Yeah.
Um, my best friend and I, just to end on a funny note, we have this saying, and it's our, we always joke we're going to get it tattooed. We probably won't, but it's the word dysfunction. And then underneath
Mm,
it's, you'll die here, but we thrive here.
mm.
Like, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sounds kind of like, oh gosh, but when the devil has thrown so much at you back and forth, like we are ready to fight. And
Yeah.
if you're fighting, we will fight right beside you. We will fast with you. We will pray with
Mm,
you. We will support you. We will go out of our way. We will throw ourselves in front of a bus for your
wow.
spiritual welfare.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing anyone can say, nothing anyone can call me to make me question what God has done in my life. He's turned me into a warrior.
Mm. That is fantastic. What an incredible response and answer to that question. Because it makes me think of God doesn't shy away from battle and he doesn't shy away from our pain. If anything, like he's like, no, we're going to get up and we're going to fight.
He said
And
that
you're going to feel
your
it.
life would not be easy. He told us
Oh,
that.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
said,
And
remember when they hate you, they hated me first.
yeah. Wow, like it's so true that God, and again, like why this for me the podcast means so much to and especially to reach those who aren't aware of it, um, that that pain is not a weakness. You know, like
Mhm.
you feeling like there's a reason we cry. There's a reason that we have pain sensors in our body. They indicate when there is something wrong. They just they're there for a reason and they're playing their part. And the same thing can be said spiritually and emotionally and mentally. All of these things. Are things that God can be right next to you in every second of it. And just your entire interview has just been proof of that. And I just to end on that note of what you said, I think, yeah, as a youth, as a youth, um, and even like, even if you're listening and you're not, in your 20s or 30s, I still believe that like we need a revival, man. Like we
We
need
do.
a revival. There's no way that we're more afraid of, just other things of superstition but not of what the Lord can do in our lives. I'm just
Right.
saying, like, I feel like we overlook the fact that there is a beautiful sunset and sunrise every day and that the wind blows, and like we are in an entire ecosystem. And for me, at least personally for me, I cannot look at it and just say that this all just happened out of nowhere. I
It
believe
wouldn't be
so strongly.
illogical to think that this isn't organized.
Yeah, like for
Yeah.
me personally, I think that this is like such a beautiful creation. Um and I understand when, like you're like, "Oh, well, like there's all of these things that," and I get that, like molecules and all this stuff. Like God created science, everything has a beautiful design, but all of this to say that there is a revival, because God and science go hand in hand, and we need a revival in the youth, to not be afraid to walk with Jesus so openly on our hearts and our sleeves and say, like, I do love Jesus and I'm not ashamed of the gospel. And like you said, I am a warrior of the Lord and I will fight for you and I will pray for you and I will be there for you. And I am your sister in Christ. And so
Yeah.
just, yeah, like I
You're
encourage
not
anyone
alone.
listening.
Even if your whole
Yeah.
community that you're around exiles you,
Yeah.
you are not alone. You're not.
Yeah.
There are
There's
other people
nothing.
that are praying for you that you don't even know about.
Oh, yeah. I've heard some testimonies about that very thing. And there's nothing that you've done that is too much that God is going to be like, I no. Like that's where I draw. There is no line. God didn't draw a
Mhm.
line. He hasn't. Jesus took on the cross so that that line would be erased, and it has been. So all of this, just to simply to say, is that you have nothing to lose by calling out onto the name of Jesus, everything to gain by
Everything.
allowing yourself to be just revived and following revival. Let me tell you something. It's a domino effect. Every life that you touch moving forward will be affected, whether it's in a mustard seed moment or grand. Because like now, look at that. Like God has placed every person on this podcast that I've had has had a desire to move forward and to touch other lives. They have shared that. They have talked about it, and how they care so much about everyone and how they want to continue that. So that comes from God because He wants to reach
Mhm.
His children. But with all of that being said, thank you so much, Stacie, for taking time out of your day to sit here with me and just be so vulnerable and open and transparent and honest. Like so honest. And I pray that if anyone listening at any point really related to her, I encourage you to check her out. She has a TikTok. Feel free to share your TikTok handle if you want to, if you're comfortable. And you will be hearing from me when it comes to if she's created a GoFundMe, if she is moving forward in that, which I believe she will. And if, the Lord continues to open her path and all of that, you will definitely hear from me updating you guys and all of that information. But with that being said, thank you so much, Stacie. And if you want to share any of your socials or anything like that, feel free before you jump out.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me come on here. When you reached out, I was like, it makes me think of that song that like, who am I? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
I
yeah.
just, and you were just going based off of my TikTok and not even, you know, not even knowing like all the ins and outs. So it's just amazing. And it's amazing how the Lord has connected us. I think you and I are friends now.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Oh, 100%. My TikTok, it is, I believe it's just my name. It's StaciemRoyster. So Stacie M. Royster. My Instagram is the same. It's just my hair page. Um, and that's really it. I put Christian content on my TikTok, on my hair page. It's mostly the hair I do, but I mean, everything goes back to the Lord. And I mean, you will
Amen.
occasionally see a verse and a video about Jesus on there. That one's more so to
Mm,
showcase my skills as a hairdresser, but you can follow me on both. And then if you're interested in, if you're in the area and you want to make an appointment, please message me and reach out. And if you want to support this ministry that is on my heart, or if you have resources, or if you're someone that has a ministry and you want to partner and you've already gotten yours off the ground, I have so much to learn, and the Lord, I'm going to need all the help I can get. So
mm, yes.
so if you feel
Yes.
like the Lord is sending you my way, don't think you're being prideful. Like, please reach out and we'll
Yeah.
see if it'll be a good fit. And just thank you, everyone in advance, for listening to my story and listening to the good things that God has done in my life. And if you haven't accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior yet, or you're afraid, or you keep denying Him in the public, just know that this is the best decision you can ever make,
Mm,
ever in your entire life. And there's a
yeah.
whole community backing you and supporting you. The world may exile you, but your eternity is worth so much more than
Mm,
anything this
mm.
world can offer you. I've had it all.
Amen.
I did the modeling, I did the partying, I did the drugs, I did the alcohol. I had that. Like I was to the point to where I was starting to get paid for those things, slowly
Mm,
but surely. I had the friend group when I had the fun friends who would smoke and do this and party, and I did all of that. And
mm,
it does not fulfill your life. Christ is the
mm.
only thing that can fulfill your life.
Yeah. Amen. So beautifully said. And again, anyone listening, if you've made it this far, congratulations on making it this far in part two, because it's going to be a two-parter. Thank you so much for your dedication on
Yes.
listening. Um, And yeah, again, I know it can be hard to understand from the outward looking in of like how could that bring peace in such a broken world? But give it a shot, and I promise you have nothing to lose but everything to gain. Um, and with this being said, I just want to thank everyone who came on. To listen to us again, thanking you, Stacie, for everything. And now with the podcast has a forum online. You click on the little link on TikTok, Instagram, or even the podcast Spotify itself. And if you're interested in being interviewed, you can click that link, fill out the little form, and I'll contact you, and we can have a little phone interview before proceeding. And then we also have a Give Butter, which is just a little donation link in case you want to help support the podcast as well. Thank you so much for listening to What God Has Done With My Pain. If you are interested in helping me spread light and truth of what God can do with pain, go to givebutter.com/what God has done with my pain, so the podcast may continue to sustain future episodes. As always, a huge shout out to Lazuli for her song No Greater Love, which you can find on Spotify. And you can find Lazuli on Instagram at Lazuli PROJ. Swing by What Way This Way on Instagram to catch some behind the scenes snippets. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss a single interview. Meantime, I would love to hear from you on social media or email. Until next time.